Greetings, Michael Didier here. We're continuing in Leviticus. Last week we covered Leviticus 20. The week before, Leviticus 19. I'm going to try and get through 2 chapters today. You know, this business, we'll see it next week. It's so clear. You know, when most people read their Bible, they say, you shall love Yahovah with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength. And they assume that they're the you. You know what? I hope that if you see anything as we go through these scriptures, is that you see who the you actually is. We saw it last week. We saw it the week before that. We saw it in Leviticus 17, 3 or 4 weeks ago. The you, remember the is the individual man of Israel. The you, usually we're talking about Israel's seed, or AKA the Ezra men, who has the strangers who dwell with them. We just simply assume that we're the you. And that, my friend, is a deadly assumption. Because if we're not the you, we've destroyed ourselves by lack of understanding. And I'm afraid that that is what is happening to the world, really, as these teachers teach about the children of Israel. The children of Israel. I don't think there's hardly a more wicked idea than making this the children of Israel and failing to understand that we're talking about Ezra's seed. The Ezra. Israel's seed. Spiritually born. I'm not talking to ladies. I'm talking to men. There's so much that we need to see. Last week, look at even the second verse. Again, you shall say to who? Israel's seed. Whoever of Israel's seed, or the stranger who dwells in Israel, who dwells with Israel, who dwells with them, who gives his descendants to Moloch, another king. Remember, we were looking at Melech and Moloch, both spelled exactly the same way. But look at how much Yahovah speaks to his man. I will set my face against that man. Talking about the Ezra, or the, well, actually here it does say Israel's seed. But we have to understand Israel's seed is the Ezra and the stranger. Any man. I will set my face against that man and will cut him off from his people. We saw this whole chapter last week was talking about the man. 10. Look at verse 10. The man and the man who. That's what it says in 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And the man who. He's giving his instructions to these men. Which men? The Ezra, the Israel seed, the spiritually born man, and the Ger who dwells with them. They are the ones who are supposed to be holy. And you shall be holy, for I, Yahovah, am holy, and have separated you from the peoples. You can't be a part of the peoples and be Yahovah's. They're mutually exclusive. And we're going to see in the last days that it's going to be the land, we saw it last week, it was the land who vomits them out. Verse 22, you shall therefore keep my statutes. Who's you? Didn't tell the Egyptians to do it. He told Ezra, he really told Israel's seed. The commandments are for the Ger who dwell with them, but they apply differently. The Ger don't get to own any land. No, they are given to Israel's seed. You shall therefore keep my statutes and my judgments and perform them, that the land where I am bringing you to dwell may not vomit you out. The world is going to get vomited out of the land before the end. Oh, but we have so many people that we love. Well, then be a light that shines in the world. He did not tell any Gentiles to keep his commandments. Not a single Egyptian, not a single Assyrian, not a single Babylonian. He told Israel to do it. He says, I am Yahovah who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. You shall have no other Elohim existing before my face. Well, this week, we're going to talk about the priests. The priests are going to have instructions. It's the priests who are the go-between Yahovah and his people. We bring our korban, those things that help us draw near to Yahovah. But they're the ones who are sanctified, set apart, even more than we are. We're already set apart. We saw that last week. We'll see it again this week. We're set apart, but they are set apart even more. They have to be in a state of Tahor, cleanliness, so that they can put the offerings, I almost hate to use that, the korban, the things that are going in the fire and being raised up to Elohim, a precious and sweet aroma to his nostrils. They're the ones that put it on the altar. We're not allowed to touch the altar, all of Israel, but the priests are set apart to be able to do that. And because of that, the priests have to stay clean. Let's take a look at some of these things. This is regarding their dead. And Yahovah said to Moses, speak to the priests, Aaron's seed, and say to them, none shall defile himself for the dead among his people. I want you to see this. You know, I do this all the time. I have the sons of Aaron. It's speak to the priests, the sons of Aaron. No, it's Aaron's seed. Let's take a look at it. I want you to see this. It's important that we see these kinds of things. It's going to be B'nai Aaron. Here it is right here. B'nai. And they want to translate it as the sons. There's no definite article there. And here's Aaron. There it is. B'nai Aaron. Speak to the priests. Aaron's seed. Does say the priests. Aaron's seed. And say to them, none shall defile himself for the dead among his people. He says, except for relatives who are nearest to him. He's going to say, which relatives are we talking about? Now, he's not talking to Aaron right now. He's speaking to the priests. Aaron's seed. Not speaking to Aaron. He's got other things for the high priest. He says, none shall defile himself for the dead among his people except for his relatives who are nearest to him. His mother, his father, his son, his daughter, and his brother. Also his virgin sister, who is near to him. Remember, she's got to be a virgin sister, who is near to him, who has no man. Has no man, says husband. The virgin of Betula has no man. Let's say what that man is. I'm sure it's got to be, it might be Baal, but it's probably no man, no Ish. Let's find out. Who has a husband? There it is. Ish. Has no Ish. If his sister has a husband or has had a husband and she's no longer a virgin, he can't defile himself for her. He says the one who is a virgin and has not defiled himself, or not defiled herself, how should I say this? Also the virgin sister who is near to him who has had no husband, for her he may defile himself. There you go. So we're talking his immediate family, mother, father, sister, brother, son, and daughter. His wife. How would that fit in? He does it for his daughter. He does it for his son. Doesn't even mention the woman, does it? Would she be included in that? She's him. She's him. I would say, of course. Dare I step out on a limb? Yeah, he would defile himself for his woman. If he's going to do it for his son and his daughter, he's going to do it for his woman. Wow, I hadn't even thought about that until just now. All right, verse 4. Otherwise he shall not defile himself, being a chief man. Ooh, that's very interesting. A chief man. You know what the word is they use for chief? Here it is here on the right. Baal. Being a Baal man among his people. Remember, I was just suggesting that was either going to be she has no man, no husband, no Ish, or it would be another word, no Baal, master. She does have a master, I guess. Her father would be. Or maybe this man would be, if she's still under his covering. But the point is this. If the man, the Ish, which we call the husband, is the master of the family, it appears that the chief may be the master of that man. Oh, we see many times that it's the man who goes to the priests about his house. Remember, we saw the house that was plagued by leprosy. And it was the priest who gave him instructions on how to take care of that. If the man has a woman who goes wayward, he takes her to the priest to deal with that situation. We'll see that in Numbers 5. There are times when the priest is going to set values on property that is given to Yehovah or potentially should be given to Yehovah. He's got the final say on how much it's going to be. A chief man among his people. He says, to profane himself. Otherwise he shall not defile himself, being a chief man among his people. As I recall, this is kalal. They are not allowed to kalal themselves. It appears that Yehovah is saying that the priests are to be their Baal. This is the same word being used, it seems like, twice. Defile himself and profane himself. Let's take a look at that briefly. What are the two words that they use there? Here he says defile himself. Tameh. Oh, isn't that interesting? Tameh. Tameh. The opposite of Tahor. Make himself dirty, contaminated. They want to say moral sense, contaminated. Yeah, I can't come before Yehovah. Not until he's clean again. Not until he's Tahor again. So he's saying, I'd much rather have him use the real words. Now that we're starting to learn these, wouldn't it be more useful? Otherwise, he shall not tamei himself, being a chief man among his people, to profane. There's the word they're looking for, is kalal, to profane himself. Oftentimes, kalal gets translated as defile. We're going to see it here in just a couple verses. We'll talk. Just remember, kalal. That's what we're talking about. Defile, profane. Verse 5. They shall not. Oh, look at this. This is even more clear. We saw it in 19. Talking about cutting the edges of your beard. Everybody thinks you're supposed to have a beard because if you're Israel, you're supposed to have a beard because it says you shall not cut the edges of your beard. But they forget to understand that we're talking about cutting the edges of your beard for the dead. Here it's very clear. Look what it says, verse 5. You shall not make any bald place on their heads. Remember, we're talking about what? The whole context of this portion right here is talking about defiling yourself for the dead among your people. They shall not make any bald places on their heads, nor shall they shave the edges of their beard, nor make any cuttings in their flesh. I've just been reading a book. I like historical fiction. I've been reading a book about Native Americans, a white girl who was taken captive by the Indians, and she's starting to like the Indians. She's understanding what's going on and how they live. But one of the things that I thought was interesting that the Indians do was they pulled out their beards, they cut themselves for the dead. It was a mourning process. And it's something that's been going on for a long time. Jehovah doesn't want us to do it. He doesn't want his priests to do it. He doesn't want Israel to do it. They shall be holy to their Elohim and not profane the name of their Elohim. What does it say? For they shall be holy to their Elohim and not profane their Elohim's name. For they bring, that was to say offer, they bring to the fire of Yahovah the food of their Elohim. The food is lechem, often gets translated as bread, but it's bread, it's food as well. It's the food of Elohim, that sweet aroma that's going up. It's the fat, a burnt offering. It's the whole animal. It's the food that's going up, and they're the ones that bring it. And they have to be holy, separated, consecrated to Yahovah to be able to do that. Remember, we don't even bring the food unless we are in a state of Tahor. Talking about here what we were reading, bringing to the fire of Yahovah the food of their Elohim. I wanted to kind of stay on that idea of the fire to Yahovah, the food of Yahovah. Here's a verse in Leviticus 3 that we looked at when we were talking about the shalamim. It says, and he, talking about the man who kills the sheep, shall bring from the slaughter of the shalamim unto Yahovah's fire the fat. The man's going to bring out the fat. The whole fat tail against the bone he doth not turn aside, and the fat which is covering the entrails, all the fat that is on the entrails, the two kidneys, and the fat that's on them, and he shall remove the lobe of the liver beside the kidneys, and he shall remove it, and the priest shall burn it on the altar as food, there it is, food, lechem, by fire to Yahovah. This is Yahovah's food. New thought. He says, they shall not take a woman who is a harlot or a defiled woman. Look at what they said here on the right. Who is a harlot or a defiled woman. A defiled woman. Nor shall they take a woman divorced from her man, her husband. This is what they say, divorced from her husband. Is that what it says? Divorced from her husband? Let's find out what it actually does say. You know, some of these things you can just look at and say, no, it doesn't say that. I know it doesn't say that. Let's take a look at it. It says, they shall not take, lekak, a woman, it's an Isha, there it is right there, Isha, who is a harlot. It's the one that does it for money. Or a defiled woman. That's the one who does it for no money. She just sleeps around. The defiled woman. Nor shall they take a woman driven away by her man. Driven away, there it is, garash. Divorced. It says divorced from her man. Driven away from her man. We still have these ideas that a woman can leave her man. Doesn't happen in Jehovah's kingdom. Never. Driven away from her man. For he is holy to his Elohim. Talking about the priest. What kind of woman can a priest take? He can't take a harlot. Can't take a defiled woman who's sleeping around. Can't take a woman who is divorced, our idea. A woman driven away from her man. The man is the one who drove her away, sent her away. For he is holy to his Elohim. Who can he take? Who's left? I can think of two. The virgin and the widow. We're going to see he can take a widow from another priest. Verse 8. For therefore thou, Moses, shall consecrate him, for he brings the bread of thy Elohim. He shall be holy to thee, for I, Yahovah, who sanctifies thee, am holy. I know it gets a little confusing in the language when we have to change it from the thou to, or from a you to a thee. Because instead of talking about one person, we're talking about, instead of talking about a bunch of people, we're talking about one person. Okay, he says, the daughter of any priest, if she profanes herself by playing the harlot. Look at that. Profanes herself. This is the same word that we were talking about. Kalal. Kalal. Profanes herself. This is the same word that we were talking about up here when we were talking about a defiled woman. Here. There's kalal. Defiled. Kalal. This is what this daughter of the priest is doing to herself. And look what happens when she does it to herself. He says, the daughter of any priest, if she kalals herself by playing the harlot, she kalals her father. She shall be burned with fire. You know, this day and age, Family Channel, all these shows, I mean, you can hardly watch a show these days that doesn't have promiscuity in it. Encouraging young women to sleep around. It's everywhere. Look at how serious it is for the daughter of a priest. If she does it in her father's house, she gets burned with fire. You know, it's still serious. A woman who's sleeping around in an Israelite's house. The man takes her, finds out, hey, this woman isn't a virgin. He brings out the sheets the next day. Hey, your daughter's not a virgin. What happens? He stones him with stones. Stones her with stones. Because she played the harlot in her father's house. Still very similar, isn't it? She's getting stoned. This one's getting burned. Now he's switching gears. Going to talk about the high priest. Oh, by the way, this word kalal is to make common, to make him common. He makes his or her father common. It says pierce, begin, common. That's the way I would want to make this be. Make it something common that is meant to be set apart for a special function. She makes herself common by sleeping with another man who's not her husband. Also gets translated as wound or profane. That's why I say in defile, profaned. Oftentimes they're the same word. Here they used it profane both times, but it was kalal. She kalals her father. Okay, now we're changing gears. Here's the high priest. Here's what he has to say about the high priest, who is the Ha-Kohen Hagdadal. He who is the high priest among his brethren, on whose head the anointing oil was poured, and who is consecrated to wear the garments, shall not uncover his head nor tear his clothes. Again, we're talking about a grieving process. Covering your head, tearing your clothes. We've seen that happen many times. They uncovered their head and tore their clothes. This is the priests. The priest isn't allowed to do that. At this point in time, Leviticus 21, we are our priests. We have a head priest, a high priest, Aaron, and his two sons. That's it. So for one of those three to become tameh, unclean, would have a very severe effect on our population as a whole and our ability to bring our korban to Yehovah's fire, to be able to draw near to him, to get forgiveness in the case of a sin offering, kata'ah offering, a thank you to Yehovah for his faithfulness in the case of a vow offering, and just to draw near to him in general with a burnt offering or a shalamim offering. I said for a priest to uncover his head, it would be an interruption of his duty. This is what happened when a priest goes to his near of kin in verse 2. Yeah, he goes to his near of kin. He's going to be made unclean. Can't perform the work that he needs to do. It appears that the priest, the high priest, does not interrupt his duty for anyone, not even his own father or mother. He cannot even tear his clothes. Look at that. Nor shall he go near any dead body, nor defile himself or his father or his mother. How about his woman? Again, we have that same situation, don't we? Can he do it for his woman? I would say he can. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Couldn't do it for his sons. Look at what happened with Aaron and his sons. Remember, his sons brought strange fire before Yehovah. And they were struck down by a fire. They came out of heaven, burned them up. But the priests were not even allowed to grieve at that time. Do you remember that story? They're the only priests. They've got to remain available to serve Israel's seed and the Ger who dwell with them. Nor shall he go out of the sanctuary, nor profane the sanctuary of his Elohim. For the consecration of the anointing oil of his Elohim is upon him. I am Yehovah. This is the high priest. Don't confuse it with the priests in general. This is for the high priest. He's got to stay clean. It says, and he shall take a woman in her virginity. Look who he can't take. Verse 14. A widow. The other ones could take a widow. A divorced woman. Remember we were talking about the divorced woman being a woman driven out. A driven out woman. A defiled woman. A harlot. He shall not take. He shall take a virgin of his people as his woman, nor shall he profane his seed among his people, for I, Yehovah, sanctify him. Nor shall he profane his seed. Profane his posterity among his people. What is that? What is he saying here? Posterity, it's his seed. Profane his seed. How is he profaning his seed? I got a hunch that he's profaning his seed by taking a widow, a woman that's been put away, or a defiled woman, or a harlot. That's how he's going to defile his seed. Could it be? Just a thought. And Jehovah spoke to Moses, saying, speak to Aaron, saying, no man, talking about men, no man. Let's find out. I want you to see it. Here it is. Ish. Speak unto Aaron, saying, Ish, of thy seed. Where's the negative? Oh, there it is right there. No, that's not the negative. The negation. Well, here, I've got it translated here. Speak to Aaron, no man of thy descendants in succeeding generations who has any defect in him may approach to bring the bread of his Elohim for any man who has a defect. This is a defect. Let me go back to this. Again, of course, we're talking about men. We're talking about his seed. Speak unto Aaron, saying, no man of your seed in succeeding generations who has a defect, who has any defect, may approach to bring the bread of his Elohim. For any man who has a defect, okay, here we're talking about a mum. Here's the word, mum. Remember we were talking about tamid. Often tamid is a spotless lamb. And we always say it's not spotless. We're bringing a whole live lamb to Yehovah. There are a time where it's going to have no mum. This is the word that we're talking about. This is the word that I've mentioned to you many times before. No mum, no defect. And in the next coming verses, we're going to see that exactly going on. But here's a man of Aaron's seed. No man of Aaron's seed who has a mum can bring this food to his Elohim, to the altar of his Elohim is what we're talking about. Now he's going to tell us what kind of mum are we talking about. For any man who has a mum defect shall not approach. A man blind or lame or has a marred face or any limb too long, or a man who has a broken foot, a broken hand, or is a hunchbacked or a dwarf, or a man who has a defect in his eyes, or eczema or scurf, or is a eunuch. These are the defects that we're talking about. These men are not allowed to bring the food to Yahovah's altar. They've got other duties and responsibilities that they can do in the tabernacle. They're still priests, but they can't bring the food before the altar. He says, no man. No, he doesn't. He says, every man from Aaron's seed who has in him a blemish, the priest shall not come near to bring Jehovah's fire. He has a blemish in him. His Elohim's bread he shall not bring near. Well, that's not the end of the world. Here's other things that he gets to do. That was 21. He may eat the bread of his Elohim, both the most holy and the holy. Only he shall not go near the veil or approach the altar. So he can't go near the veil. The veil that we're talking about is the veil that is in the tabernacle between the holy place and the most holy place. And he shall not approach the altar. The altar that we're talking about is the altar, the brazen altar, that he's not allowed to go near. The one that's going to have the burnt offerings and all the things that we sent up as a sweet aroma to Yahovah. The food of his Elohim from the Kodesh, Kodeshim, and the Kodeshim he shall eat. I tried to find an example of each, but couldn't. This is the best I could do. Here's we're talking about, well, let's see if I can get this to be on the page for you. I guess I'm not going to be able to get it. Let's just go to it. It's 8 through 14. We read it a couple weeks. No, we haven't read it yet. And Jehovah spoke to Aaron. Here I myself have also given you charge of my heave offerings as a holy gift, as holy gifts of Israel's seed, the heave offering. That is the present that we were talking about, the heave offering, the room, and the tarumah, a present, something that's raised up. Remember, we raise up, the heave offering was raised up before Yahovah and waved before Yahovah. That was a holy gift, holy gifts. This shall be yours of the most holy things, reserved from the fire, every offering of theirs, every grain offering, every sin offering, every trespass offering, which they render to me, shall be most holy to you and your sons. So we had holy gifts, and we had most holy gifts that were coming to them and their sons. It says, in the most holy place you shall eat it. In the most holy place, probably that's not exactly what it says. As the most holy things shalt thou eat thereof. Every male shall eat thereof. It shall be holy unto thee. Kodesh, Kodeshim. As the most holy things shalt thou eat thereof. Every male. Maybe the females don't get to eat certain things that their father and their brothers get to eat. Appears that may be the case. This also is yours, the heave offering, the room, the present, room, present. This also is yours, the present of their gift. All the wave offerings of Israel's seed I have given them to you and your sons and your daughters with you as an ordinance forever. So that would be the holy thing. They can have that, but the most holy things they apparently aren't supposed to have. What did I say, 8 through what? 18? That was a long section. All the best of the oil, the best of the new wine, the grain, their first fruits, which they bring to Yehovah, I have given them to thee, to you. Whatever first ripe fruit in their land which they bring to Yehovah shall be yours. Everyone who is clean in your house may eat it. So there they get to eat that stuff. That's holy stuff. But apparently there's most holy stuff that was, what was the most holy we talked about up here? They said grain offering, every sin offering, every trespass offering. Wouldn't a grain offering be a first fruits? No, I suppose it wouldn't. No, maybe it would. I don't know. Think about first fruits. Remember we talked about it last week or the week before. I think it was in 19. We did 20 last week. In 19, we talked about the tree that bears fruit. In the first 3 years, we don't eat any of it. The 4th year, all the fruit, the first fruit's going to go to Yehovah. That's the priests. Maybe that's what they're talking about for that particular one, which is a most holy gift, most holy things. Where the first fruits of our field, our wheat harvest, our barley harvest, would that be considered holy or most holy? I would think it would be considered the holy. Guessing. Let's continue. I'm going to go back. That's the best I could do as far as finding holy versus most holy. Bring near. He may eat the bread of his Elohim, both the most holy and the holy. Okay, that's where we left off, the most holy and the holy. And he shall not go near the veil or approach the altar because he has a defect, lest he profane my sanctuary, for I, Yehovah, sanctify them. So my question is, what does the son of Aaron, Aaron's seed, do if he has a defect? Doorkeeper, assist those who are bringing offerings. Apparently he's got some other things that he does get to do. Maybe somebody, I could see him watching the door to make sure that, you're bringing a burnt offering, so you can't bring that animal. That's a female. If you're bringing a burnt offering, you got to bring a male. I could see him doing things like that. Kind of guidance. My consecrated place is what he said here. Lest he profane my sanctuary. The word that they were using was mikdash. Consecrated thing, especially a palace sanctuary. My sanctuary. That's a good word for it. And Moses said it to Aaron and his sons and to all Israel's seed. And that was the end of that chapter. Next chapter is a little bit longer, and it's still talking about much of the priests' duties and responsibilities. Then Yehovah spoke to Moses, saying, speak to Aaron and his sons. Now this says his sons, Aaron and his son. Before it said Aaron's seed. This specifically says Aaron and his sons. Here's the word. It's benim, but because it's got the vav on it that says him, in the conjugation, the mem is dropped and the vav stays. And it becomes his sons. It looks like seed, doesn't it? And many will look at this and say, oh, Michael, that's b'nai. No, it's not. It's benim. It's conjugated so that it says his sons. So look at it more carefully and learn. Speak to Aaron and his sons. There's only 2 of them right now. That they shall consecrate, natsar, hold aloft from Israel's seed my holy things. And they shall not profane my holy name from what they hallow to me. I am Yehovah. Speak to Aaron and his sons that they consecrate from Israel's seed my holy things. My Kodesh things. It's things is being added. My Kodesh. That they shall not profane my name for what they hallow. You know, when we bring gifts, if we bring gold, silver, precious stones to Yahovah, we're bringing it to his priests. I put this chapter is about the priests keeping themselves in a state of Tahor, so the work which they perform for Jehovah's Son is not profaned. All right, well, let's move on to 3. Say to them, whoever of all your descendants, say to them, whoever of all your descendants. That's what it says here on the left. Here's what it says on the right. Here's what it actually says. Every man of all your seed throughout your generations who brings Kodeshim, which Israel's seed has dedicated to Yehovah, while he has uncleanliness upon him, that person shall be cut off from my presence. Hear that? He's talking to priests. And he says, every man, priests are all men, every man of all your seed, your generations, throughout your generations, who brings the holy, which Israel's seed, which shall dedicate to Yehovah, while he has uncleanliness upon him, that person shall be cut off from my presence. What is he saying? He's saying that the man who is unclean has no business touching any holy thing. You're best off just to dismiss yourself for the day, or at least until the period of time that you can become clean again. Oh, well, I'm embarrassed that something happened. Well, be embarrassed. Is it better to be embarrassed or to be cut off from among Yahweh's people? Well, they don't know. Well, Yahovah knows. Don't. I mean, this is a good warning to the priests. Last week, we talked about all the times that we are involved with sexual relations with people who we aren't supposed to be sexually involved with, that we got cut off from among Yahovah's people. Remember how many times we saw that last week? And the man who? And the man who? Verse 4. This says, 3, every man of all your seed, whoever of your descendants. It doesn't say whoever, it says every man. Call Ish of all your descendants. This one says whatever man. Here it's saying Ish again. Remember we talked about that. We've seen that in past weeks. Ish. Any man. Every man. Whatever man is what it says here. Of Aaron's seed, who is a leper or has a discharge, shall not eat the holy offerings. The holy, not eat the holy. Here, let's see if we can find it in here. Every man who Aaron's seed, who is a leper, who has a discharge, shall not eat the holy until he is clean. And whoever touches anything made unclean by a corpse, or a man who has an emission of semen. And Jehovah spoke to Moses, saying, command Israel's seed that they put out of the camp every leper, everyone who has a discharge, and whoever becomes defiled by a corpse. This is really echoing the same thing as this one. Whatever man, every man, any man of Aaron's seed who has a leper, has a discharge. Here we are. Has a leper, has a discharge. This is the zuv that we're talking about. Same word that we're seeing here is this particular word here. A zuv. As a zuv. There it is right there. That looks like zub, but it's zuv. Remember, it's a soft V. Soft B. Zuv. Sounds like a V. or a man who has an emission of semen. These are things that get you kicked out. You can't serve Yahovah and be unclean. Dismiss yourselves, is really the point that he's making here. Whoever touches any creeping thing. I have creeping thing. I had a question about that. Swarming thing, creeping thing. Human variety and human variety, by which he may be made unclean, or any person by whom he would become unclean. Whatever his uncleanliness may be, that person, remember the person still talking about the man, a man, any man, every man, man. The person who has touched any such thing shall be unclean until evening, and shall not eat the holy until he washes his body with water. Well, remember, there are some things, if you're a leper, for those kinds of things, it's going to take a while to be clean, isn't it? So that's why I say it's not just until evening, but it's going to be for that period of time until you are judged to be Tahor by one of your fellow priests. Because remember, you got to come to the priest, a priest, in order to be called Tahor once again. They're going to do the bird with the scarlet thread and the cedar wood, and they're going to dip that. Remember, they had two birds, one they were going to kill. Twist off its head, dump the water into a bucket with running water. Remember the whole process. That is what has to happen. And we're not going to be performing the duties if we have any of these things on us. I had flying insects. Touches any hair, shall be unclean until evening. You know, talk about swarming things, swarming creatures. Being unclean by swarming creatures. Are we to understand, and I think we are, that if we kill, say, a fly, a gnat, and we touch that animal, that flying thing, that swarming thing, it makes us unclean. Whoever touches any creeping thing, any swarming creature by which he would be made unclean. Practically every insect is a swarming creature that can make us unclean. Or no, or any person of whom he would be made unclean, whatever his uncleanness may be. Could be a woman in her menses. Could be a man who has had an emission of semen that day. Remember, he's unclean until evening. Priests have to be really careful who they touch, don't they? They have to be very careful about what they do. How about swatting a mosquito? Oh, I just crushed a mosquito on my forehead or on my neck. And it's dead, and it's still on me. Am I unclean? We may be. Take a look at this. But all other flying insects, this is talking about the locust, and locust. But all other flying insects which crawl shall be an abomination to you. By these you shall become unclean. Whoever touches the carcass of any of them shall be unclean until evening. There it is. Whoever carries part of the carcass of any of them shall wash his clothes and be unclean until evening. The carcass of any animal which divides the foot, but is not cloven hooved and does not chew the cud, is unclean to you. So a dead pig is going to make us unclean. A dead beef is not going to make us unclean. A dead lamb is not going to make us unclean. A dead goat's not going to make us unclean. But a dead unclean animal is going to make us unclean. A pig, a dog. Everyone who touches it shall be unclean, and whatever goes on its paws among all kinds of animals that go on all fours, those are unclean to you. Whoever touches any such carcass shall be unclean until evening. This is what we're talking about. Whoever carries any such carcass shall wash his clothes, be unclean until evening. It is unclean to you. Here's another one, chapter 7, verse 21. Moreover, the person who touches any unclean thing, such as a human uncleanliness, an unclean animal, any abominable unclean thing, and who eats the flesh of the Thanksgiving Shalomim, or the Thanksgiving Zavak, Thanksgiving slaughter, that person that belongs to Yehovah, that person shall be cut off from among his people. Again, we're talking about doing things, touching holy things, well, in a tameh state. We don't do it. It's going to get us cut off from among his people, and it's going to spoil what the good that the man's trying to bring. He goes on, verse 6. Still talking about the man, whatever man, ish of Israel, of Aaron's seed, says the person who has touched any such thing shall be unclean until evening, and shall not eat the holy unless he washes his body with water. Here we have unclean until evening, not doing it until he washes his body with water. And when the sun goes down, he shall be clean. And afterwards he may eat the holy, because it is his food. You know, next week we're going to talk about how Yahuwah's days are put together. I've been hearing some crazy things here lately, talking about when is the Sabbath? Does it go from evening to evening, like everything else that Yahuwah does, or is it just during the daytime? There's people now saying that it's just the daytime. The Sabbath is during the daytime, and the nighttime is not the Sabbath anymore. No, I think you're making a terrible mistake. But we'll see it clearly next week. Let's watch for that as we go through the scriptures next week. 8. Whatever dies naturally or is torn by beasts, he shall not eat. We talked about that in Leviticus 17. Whatever dies naturally or is torn. We're talking about something that is torn and is dead. Dies naturally means it dies on its own. Something that's torn. These are both things that died, that are dead animals. He shall not eat to defile himself with it. Well, remember, Israel, the Ezra men don't eat this. Things that die naturally. We can give it to the ger, or we can sell it to the ben nagar. It appears things that are torn, we don't get to do either with. All right, 9. No, let's see what I have for 8. And every person who eats what has died naturally or was torn by beast, whether he is a native or of the country or a ger, he shall both wash his clothes. Oh yeah, remember this is what it said in Leviticus 17, which totally contradicted what we had seen in other places. Then he shall be clean. Choosing to eat things torn or that died naturally is making a decision to be unclean for a short time. You're unclean. Look what it says. Even in this, it says it. But in other places, it said we weren't supposed to eat it at all. The Ezra. He shall both wash his clothes, bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. Then he shall be clean. So doing this is going to make us unclean. But again, are we supposed to do it at all? Choosing to eat things torn or that died naturally is making a decision to be unclean. All right, so that the priests do not get this option. No, they don't. They got to stay clean all the time. Here's Leviticus 7. Speak to Israel's seed, saying, you shall not eat any fat of an ox or sheep or goat, the fat of an animal that dies naturally, and the fat of what is torn by beasts may be used by others, may be used in other ways, but you shall by no means eat it. Okay, he's talking to Israel's seed. This is the Ezra. This is for the animal that dies naturally, or the fat that is torn by wild beasts. I remember that we can give the ger one of the two. I forget what it was. I think it's the thing that dies of himself we can give to the ger. But you shall not abandon. Leviticus 7 might be instructions for the priests anyway. I'd have to look at that more carefully. Let's continue. They shall therefore keep my ordinances, lest they bear sin for it and die thereby. If they profane it, I, Yahovah, sanctify them. Again, we're talking about the priests. They, any man among Aaron's seed. Now look at this. Here we're talking about, I got to keep my mind stayed on the priests. It's hard sometimes when we're going through these scriptures to discern who the pronouns belong to. We had they and them in this last verse. And they and them seem to be whatever man of Aaron's seed. But now we're getting into more difficult situations. I particularly had problems with 14 and 15 and 16. I still don't have any clarity on it at all. Let's take a look at it together and see what you think. He says, no outsider shall eat the holy. One who dwells with the priest or a hired servant shall not eat the holy, the Kodesh. Okay, so when we're talking about an outsider, we're talking about a Zor, first of all, a Zor. A Zor is somebody who's not part of a specific group. Normally, I have thought of the Zor as being somebody who had the truth given to them, but turned from the truth. They don't want to be a part of that truth anymore. They are now Zor to those who are upholding the truth. If we're talking about those who are able to go into the sanctuary, the most holy place. Not just anybody goes into that most holy place. There are times where a man of Israel could go in, and a woman of Israel, if he's bringing his woman in for judgment before Yahovah, they would go in. But for the most part, the normal Israelite would be Zor to where the priests get to go. He's Zor as to what the priests get to eat. You follow what I'm saying? This man, he says, a hired servant, or one who dwells with the priest. I mean, he can dwell with the priest. Maybe he's a relative. Could a priest have a relative that's not a son of Aaron? No outsider shall eat the holy, one who dwells with the priest. Who's dwelling with the priest? Could this be somebody who's visiting? Could this be a relative? Could be. Maybe they gave their daughter to a son of Israel. That could be. And now they're having a dinner at their place, but they can't eat the holy things. One who dwells with the priest, or a hired servant. Obviously, the hired servant, he's not going to do it. Shall not eat the holy. But look what it says. But the priest who buys a person, remember this is a servant, buys a person, buys a servant. A servant is their property forever, and their seed is their property forever. But if the priest buys a person with his money, this could be a man or a woman, he may eat it. And the one who is born in his house may eat his food. They get to eat what is Kodesh. Remember, we're not talking about Kodeshim. We're talking about Kodesh. Now it says, if the priest's daughter is married to an outsider. Okay, look at the word that they're looking at here, outsider. If the priest's daughter shall become Azor's man. Is what it says. Azor's man. Azor's man. This is a man who's not a priest. Remember, he's not part of that group. She may not eat the holy, the kodashim. She may not eat the kodashim presents, terumah. Kodashim terumah. If the priest's daughter is married to a Zor man, Zor man's, if she becomes a Zor man's, man, it's hard to do that. How do you do show possessive on ish? I had to do it with English, Zor man's. I guess I could have done it like this too, a Zor man's. She belongs to a Zor. She's not going to eat it. But if the priest buys a person with his money, he may eat it. And the one who was born in his house, he may eat his food. If the priest's daughter is married to an outsider, okay, that's what we were just at, she may not eat the kodashim terumah. But if the priest's daughter is a widow or divorced, so here her man died, or her man sent her back. Get out of my house. Go back to your father's house. But look what it says. And if the priest's daughter is a widow or divorced and has no child, no seed. No seed. Doesn't say child, has no seed. The seed is going to come from her Zor man. Has no seed, and returned to her father's house as in her youth, she may eat her father's food, but no outsider shall eat it. No outsider shall eat it. Would her seed that comes from the Zor man, not necessarily a bad man, an Israel man, but not a son of Aaron man, can't eat it. No outsider shall eat it. So if this says if a woman is a widow or divorced and has no child, what if she has a child? Is that what we're talking about here? No outsider shall eat it? Maybe. She may eat her father's food, but no outsider shall eat it. Now, this is where I get confused. And if a man, here it is, if a man eats Kodesh unintentionally, a man eats Kodesh unintentionally, then he shall restore a holy, a Kodesh, to the priest and add 1/5 to it. How does that work? What's going on here? Is this possibly, say I'm new, I'm a ger, just became an Ezra last year, I've now got some land, I've got my first male goat coming from my flock, and I ate it. Oh no! I wasn't supposed to eat it. It was a Kodesh thing. I was supposed to give it to the priest, that first male. Remember the male that opens the womb? I was supposed to give it to the priest. And I didn't. I ate it. Is this what we're talking about? Could this be? And if a man, remember it's a man. Where does the buck stop? We ate it as a family. But it stops on me. I'm the one that's responsible for my family. We ate what was Kodesh to the priest. Oh my! Not supposed to be done. Is that what we're talking about? If a man eats the holy unintentionally, then he shall restore the holy, restore a holy. He ate the holy. He's going to restore a holy to the priest and add 1/5 to it. Remember, if you steal something, you're going to add 20% to it. Maybe that's what we're talking about. Could it be? Otherwise, I'm not sure. How did the man eat something of the priests unintentionally? Sat down at the priest's table and ate it? No, I don't think so. I think he's eating something that was supposed to go to the priests or supposed to go to Yehovah. He ate it unintentionally. That's all I can figure for this. It says, they shall not profane the holy of Israel's siege, which they bring to Yehovah. They. Who is they? Who's they? They shall not profane. There's the kalal. This says they, the yod, and the vav says they shall not. There's a negation in there too low. They shall not profane my holy, which Israel's seed shall raise unto Yehovah. They shall not. Who's they? Who's they? Is this the man? If and a man. How'd it go? And if a man and a man. Is it a man who? No, it says, and if a man, and if a man, and if a man. If it's there, that's the key. Right here, key. And if a man eats the holy unintentionally, they, who's they? They shall not profane the holy of Israel's seed, which they bring to Yehovah. They makes it sound like it is the priests. But how does that fit in? Is this another? Maybe these are two separate things. Maybe these two things are not related. Maybe he's just simply saying, they, the priests, shall not profane the holy of Israel's seed, which they bring to Yehovah. That might make sense. So, in other words, we profane the holy, which Israel's seed brought to Yehovah, by letting a relative who's an outsider eat that meat. That could be, I suppose. Or allow them to bear the guilt of trespass. Again, allow them. Who's them? Or allow them. So if they is the priest, how does that work with the them? Or allow them to bear the guilt of trespass. Does the priest bear the guilt of trespass? Maybe that's what it is. Does the priest bear the guilt of trespass by allowing someone to eat something that is kodashim, who's a zor? Could be. That would almost make more sense. When they eat their holy, for I, Yehovah, sanctify them. I'll tell you, this was a difficult section. Here I put, so causing sin to come on them, Israel. No, I don't think it's Israel. I don't think that works. And so that's why I've gone back and forth. The chapter's about the priests. Maybe we need to stay on that focus and make the they and the them the priests. Let's go to 17. And Yehovah spoke to Moses, saying, speak to Aaron and his sons, and to all Israel's seed, and say to them. So who are we speaking to? Aaron, his sons, and to all Israel's seed. That means we're speaking to everybody but the ger, and the male servants, and perhaps male sons. He says, any man, ish. Oh, He's speaking to Aaron, his sons, and all Israel's seed. But he's saying any man of Israel's house, that's Israel's seed, Ezra houses, or the stranger in Israel who brings his korban for any of his vows. Vows. Hear this? We're talking about vows now. What's a vow? Here's the word that they use for it, nadar, a promise. It says, a thing promised. Oh, Yehovah, I need your help. If you'll do this for me, I'll bring a korban. I'll bring a korban. I'll bring a korban of a vow, a nadar to you. It's a promise. It's a vow. If he brings his korban for any of his vows or any of his free will, which they bring to Yehovah as a burnt offering. So we're talking about a burnt offering versus a shalamim. Remember that with the olah, the whole thing is going to be burned. With the shalamim, we're going to burn the fat. We're going to give the breast and the leg to the priest, and we're going to keep the rest of it. If it's a burnt offering, though, we already saw in Leviticus 1 that it's got to be a male. You shall bring for your free will a male, whole and alive. This is the word tamim. Always gets translated as this, perfect. Can you see the very first word there? I don't know if you can see that or not. No, you can't see it. It's off the screen. It says entire. Whole, integrity, but they want to say without blemish, complete, full, perfect. No, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking whole and alive. That's what tamim is all about. But now we're talking about a free will offering or a vow offering. A vow or a free will. The free will is the nedabah, spontaneous offering. You shall bring a male whole and alive from the cattle, the sheep, or the goats. Okay, makes perfect sense. Cattle, sheep, goats. But listen to what he says in verse 20. Whatever has a defect, here's the word that we're using. That's the mum. That's the blemish. When we're talking about no blemish, this is the word that we would be talking about. So we're talking about bringing an animal whole and alive without a blemish. In the case of a vow or a free will offering that's going to be used for an olah. I know, there's a lot here to remember, isn't there? But this is why Yehovah teaches us little by little, step by step. Precept upon precept, line upon line. He says, whatever has a defect you shall not bring, for it shall not be acceptable on your behalf. Now he goes on, and amen. And amen. Again, we're talking about men doing it. Ladies don't bring these things. And if a man brings a slaughtered shalamim, here's the slaughtered, zavek, shalamim, shalem, plural form, to Yehovah to accomplish a vow or a free will. So we can either bring for a vow or a free will. It's our choice. Father, I want to give you a free will offering or a vow. I promise if you'll do this, I'll bring you a vow as a burnt offering. That means I'm not even going to eat it. It's all going to go up to you, Father. It's going to be food for you. But now, we could bring it as a shalamim instead. If a man brings a slaughtered shalamim to Yehovah to accomplish a vow or free will, in cattle, beeves, or flocks, sheep and goat, it must be tamim, whole and alive. To be accepted, it must be completely without blemish. There it is. That's the mum that we're talking about. Without blemish. You know, we've got this idea of tamim being whole and alive, we'd never be able to... an animal that has a short leg, a bad ear, a blind eye, you can't ever eat it if you live close to Yehovah, because anything that you eat, you're supposed to bring to him. With that understanding, getting a blind eye means you get to live forever. Ridiculous. But that's how people, because they fail to follow the logic of their thinking by translating tamim as without blemish. They fail to see that some animals would get a grace. They would never be eaten. Couldn't be killed. Sheesh. Those that are blind or broken or maimed or have an ulcer or eczema or scabs. Does this sound familiar? Weren't we just talking about the priest who has a mum that cannot bring things to Yehovah's altar for these very same reasons? Do you see what's going on? Those that are blind or broken or maimed or have an ulcer or eczema or scabs, you shall not bring these to Yehovah or burn them, raise them. Burn, what is the word they're using there for? Isha, burn. Burn, isn't that interesting? Isha is also the word for burn. Them on the altar to Yehovah. He says, either a bull or a sheep or a goat that has any limb too long or too short. This is exactly what we saw in the last ones. They named a bunch of things and then they went on and named other things. Or too long or too short. You may offer as a free will offering. Hear that? As a free will offering. You can use this if it's got, you can't use it for a, oh, isn't that interesting? You can't use it for the vow, but apparently you can use a animal that has a limb too long or too short. You may offer as a free will offering, but not for a vow. It shall not be accepted. Or for a vow, it shall not be accepted. You shall not bring to Yehovah what is bruised or crushed or torn or cut. In your land you shall make. In your land you shall not make. Things that we're going to bring to Yehovah when we're in the land. Interesting that they would say, in your land. In your land you shall not make. They translated it a little bit differently. This is verse 24. Here's how they translated it. You shall not bring to Yehovah what is crushed or what is bruised or crushed or torn or cut, nor shall you make, they add the words, any offering of them, nor shall you make in your land. And that's what it says, nor shall you make in your land. He goes on, nor from a foreigner's hand. This is the Ben Nakar's hand, nor from the Ben Nakar's hand shall you bring any of these as food to your Elohim, because their corruption is in them, and I guess you could say their mum is in them. Their mum. They shall not be accepted on your behalf. So how do you have a Ben Nakar bring any of these as food for your Elohim? Ben Nakar? Are we going to have a man who's not one of Yehovah's priests slaughter something and burn? On what altar? Bread to Yehovah? Wow, there's a lot that we have to learn. They shall not be accepted on your behalf. And Yehovah spoke to Moses, saying, when a bull or a sheep or a goat is born, it shall be 7 days with its mother. And from the 8th day and thereafter it shall be accepted as an offering made by fire, as It's not an offering made by fire. It shall be pleasing, it shall be a pleasing offering to Jehovah's fire, is what it says. A pleasing offering. It shall be a pleasing offering to Jehovah's fire. Is exactly what we're talking about. After the 8th day. No, after the 7th day. The 8th day and thereafter. Why is that? Is it because, remember, we get circumcised on the 8th day. Why do we get circumcised on the 8th day? Does it have to do with eternity? Israel circumcised their sons on the 8th day. Why not the 7th day? Glenn McWilliams has some interesting ideas. He's a great researcher, and so he looks at a lot of things. And I'm going to just read to you what he suggests. I don't know that I agree with it. I think there's a spiritual dimension here about the 8th day. Remember, it's the 8th day. We're bringing it to Yehovah, our spiritual Elohim. We're being circumcised on the 8th day, according to our spiritual Elohim's instructions. Here's what he suggests. The requirement that an animal remain with its mother for 8 days is given no explanation in the Torah. I would suggest, therefore, that the 8th day requirement may have to do with the viability of life. Oh man, I don't know. Infant mortality for both man and beast was relatively high in ancient times. So now we're talking about ancient times rather than where we're at right now. Does Jehovah change? Does his word endure forever or not? I don't like to talk about ancient times. Note that the male Israelite does not receive the sign of the covenant until he is 8 days old. The requirement that an animal be left with its mother for 8 days assures that the newborn animal is indeed viable. Is that what it's about? Maybe, maybe not. Not sickly or dying. If this is so, then this requirement is consistent. If this is so, then this requirement is consistent with the standard of physical perfection listed in previous verses. Let us also recall that the number 8 is in the scripture alludes to the fullness of life and new beginnings. Do you know when the priests are sanctified to Yehovah, they're sanctified for him for 7 days. The 8th day is the day that they begin their duties as priests. I think it's more of a spiritual reasons that this is happening, not viability of life. Let's go on. Whether it's a cow or a ewe, do not kill both her and her young on the same day. Don't kill a mother and her young one on the same day. Same day. Do we do it shortly thereafter? I don't think so. Maybe we do. We kill the mother. We kill the young one. They suggest that it has to do with keeping the seed alive, keeping the matrix going. I hate to talk about that when we're talking about a female cow. It says a mother, and it's, what does it say? A mother, whatever it is, whether it is a cow or a ewe, do not kill both her and her young on the same day. Sure, a bull or a cow, that's the cow, or a ewe. It's talking about a member of the flock. Do not kill both her and her young on the same day. It doesn't say whether the young is a male or a female. But it appears, if we're talking about opening the matrix, a male animal, we're not going to kill that firstborn of that cow or that, say, sheep or goat. We're not going to kill that male until a specific time. Remember, it's the one that's opening the matrix. The firstborn of the males are Yehovah's, both man and beast. Even clean and unclean. If it's a donkey, remember we have to either kill the donkey or give a lamb in its place. So even for an unclean animal, we're going to do things differently. Could this be what we're talking about? Waiting until 8 days and then giving the firstborn son to Yehovah, but not taking the mother, so that we have still time for life to come from her. Or if we're taking her, we can't take for a firstborn offering. We can't do that. The Bakor offering. Bakor, remember, firstborn male, firstborn. And when you offer a slaughter of thanksgiving to Yehovah, offer it of your own free will. That's what it says here. And if you bring a slaughter, look at this. It says, offer a slaughter. The word is this. And when you slaughter a slaughter of thanks, slaughter a slaughter of thanks. We're using this word slaughter, zavik, as both a noun and a verb, or a verb and a noun. Slaughter a slaughter of thanks. Of your own free will, you shall slaughter it. They use offer twice and sacrifice once for this word slaughter, zavik. It's something that we eat. Would you, reading this verse, understand that this is something that we're going to eat? I'm guessing not. On the same day, it shall be eaten. Okay, whenever we have a slaughter, we're going to slaughter shalomim. We're going to bring it to Yehovah. This is a slaughter of thanks. A slaughtered shalomim is a slaughter of thanks. On the same day, it shall be eaten. You shall leave none of it until morning. I am Yehovah. Remember, though, if it was a vow or a free will offering, we were going to be able to eat it for the next 2 days. Okay, 2 more verses. Maybe 3 more verses. Therefore, you shall keep my commandments and perform them. I am Yehovah, Ani Yehovah. You shall not profane my name, kalal my name, but I will be hallowed among Israel's seed. I am Yehovah who sanctifies you. Sanctifies you, makes you holy. Who hallowed you. I remember we talked about this, being holy, being sanctified in 19. I want to just show you this before we close. I think it's important. Here it is in 19. I think it was 2. Yeah, here it is, Kodesh. The Hebrew word translated as holy is Kodesh. Kaf Dalet Shin. The ancient Hebrew ideograph gives us great understanding as to the meaning of this word. The letter Kaf is a picture of the back of a head and conveys the idea of being behind. The letter Dalet is the picture of a door and conveys the idea of opening or closing and swinging back and forth. The letter Shin is the picture of teeth, conveys the idea of eating, biting, crushing. The last 2 letters, the Dalet and the Shin, form the word dash, the Hebrew word dash, which is the word for threshing. In these 2 ideographs, Dalet Shin, we see the heavy sled that is that was pulled back and forth over the grain to crush it in order to separate the chaff from the seed. I can almost picture the heavy sled that is slid back and forth with the head, the cough. Remember, it says the back of a head. It conveys the idea of being behind. Who's behind the thresher? That is pulled back and forth over the grain to crush it in order to separate the chaff from the seed. That's what Yahovah is doing for us right now. He's taking us and purifying us as silver is purified by heating it up and getting the dross off of it. As the chaff, in this case, the chaff of the wheat is separated from the seed, or the seed is separated from the chaff and burned up. The chaff is burned up. So the word Kodesh can be understood as referring to the state of being after the chaff has been removed. We're in the process of this removal, and it's painful sometimes. It implies a state of being without mixture. Israel is called to be without mixture, just as Jehovah is without mixture. Let's finish our last verse here, 22. Therefore, you shall keep my commandments and perform them. I am Yahovah. You shall not profane my name, but I will be hallowed among Israel's seed. I am Yahovah who sanctifies you. The word that we're talking about is Kodesh. Again, here it is right here. Kodesh. Separates you, makes you clean, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your Elohim. I am Yahovah. Well, next week we will be talking about the feasts of Yahovah. Oh, you know what? This is one more chapter that I love to go to because we get to see that the Ezra are the native-born sons. They are the Israel's seed. And when we begin to see this, we begin to understand better who Yahovah is talking about when he talks about the thou and the you and the thee in the scriptures. Most of us think we're them, but we're not. We've got more to learn. The goal is to become Yahovah's Kassid. We talked about the Kassid last week. Elohim kind. We were created in Yahovah's image and in his likeness. But after the fall, we were created in Adam's image and in Adam's likeness. By coming back to Yahovah in our repentance, leaving the kingdom of our birth, joining ourselves to him as his Ger, and then at Passover becoming his Ezra, Israel's seed, the spiritually born men, heirs of the kingdom, his son, Israel. Let my son go that he may serve me. We begin to see things that we've never seen before. Next week in this chapter, we will see it again. Hopefully we'll get through the end of this chapter. It's the last 3 verses of that chapter that he makes it very, very clear in. All right, I've got to stop now. Thank you for joining me today. We'll see you again next week. Love you tons. Bye now.